Hey, good Monday morning here. Hey, I came across this article at military.com, and this affecting Army soldiers right now. And some of you may have kids there, or maybe grandkids at some of these bases. But here's the article. It says over 151 million taken from soldiers' paycheck for food costs spent elsewhere by the Army. That's a staggering amount of money. But hang in there with me on this, because as I read, this article actually gets worse. Um, Here we go. So the Army is reproposing more than half the money it collects from junior enlisted soldiers for food. According to data reviewed by military.com, the numbers suggest that a large portion of those funds are not going towards feeding soldiers, a diversion of resources coming at a time when troops increasingly struggle to find nutritious food on base. The money is collected in what amounts to a tax on troops, taken from their basic allowance for substance BAS payments, roughly $460 per month, that is automatically deducted from the paychecks of service members who live in barracks, and is intended to help cover food costs. For junior enlisted troops who earn about $30,000 annually, the cost can be consequential. Uh, 2024 financial records provided by the service from 11 of the Army's largest bases show that more than 151 million of 225 million collected from soldiers was not spent on food. Given that the Army operates 104 garrisons, the true amount of unspent funds is likely far higher. So hang in there with me. It's just returned to the big pool. It's just returned to the big pool of Army funds, and it's used someplace else. One service official with direct knowledge of the situation said during an interview that was arranged by the Army Public Affairs Office, referring to redirected BAS money collected from soldiers. So at Fort Stewart, Georgia, for example, soldiers contributed $17 million, but the base spent just $2.1 million. That's redirecting 87% of the funds. Schofield Barracks in Hawaii collected 14.5 million, but used only 5.3 million, meaning 63% of the money was used elsewhere. All but two bases left more than half the money for food unspent. Joint Base Elmendorf, Richardson, Alaska, and Fort Bliss, Texas, left 41 and 49% of funds on the table, respectively. So it's unclear what specifically the additional funds taken from soldiers are being spent on, but they do not appear to be going towards feeding soldiers. Major expenses such as dining hall infrastructure and food service worker salaries come from separate funding sources. And when pressed repeatedly by military.com, Army officials declined to provide additional financial data. How to feed the force is an equation service members continue to grapple with. In 2023, military.com reported that Fort Cavazos, Texas, the Army's most expensive base, was barely able to keep food services running for much of that summer, with only 2 of its 10 dining facilities open, leaving soldiers struggling to find meals. In November last year, the publication reported pervasive food shortages at Fort Carson, Colorado. Soldiers were fed meals that were just a slice of toast and lima beans, troops told military.com. So that came straight from troops. The Army has a nutrition policy on what it is supposed to feed soldiers, though it's rarely followed and in some cases outright ignored. The service has invested in so-called kiosks, which are cheap alternatives to major dining facilities. Instead of cooked meals, soldiers have access to grab-and-go snacks and prepackaged sandwiches akin to the quality of prepared meals at a gas station. Military.com reviewed the menus at those kiosks and found that it is virtually impossible for soldiers to stay within healthy nutrition guidelines, with most offerings being heavy in sugar and low in protein. The service's previous top enlisted leader, Sergeant Major of the Army Michael Grinston, sought to heavily invest in healthy foods, seeking to feed soldiers more like professional athletes and dramatically expand meal options to include fresh protein shakes. But those efforts never came to fruition after getting snagged in bureaucratic difficulties. Stealing money from our soldiers is not how we achieve military readiness. Rep. Jill Takuda, if I'm saying that right, Democrat from Hawaii, whose district includes Schofield Barracks, told military.com when presented with the numbers. The fact that at least 151 million was collected from soldiers and not spent on food as required demands not just an immediate investigation but swift accountability. That's a ton of money. Army officials declined to answer detailed or even broad questions about how so much money is diverted and how budgets for food are decided. The service also declined to make any senior official available on the record for interviews. Major Andrea Kelly, an Army spokesperson, told military.com in a statement the service only uses funds needed to feed the projected number of meals based on previous head counts, meaning historic attendance at dining facilities dictate how much food is purchased. In the past, service officials have pointed to a lack of attendance at Army dining facilities, saying resources are continually stripped because of perception of dwindling interest. Reports from service members frequently describe undercooked meat, unseasoned meals, a lack of fresh ingredients, and unhealthy menu options. The standard and sometimes dangerous food in turn leads to fewer soldiers using the facilities, a downward spiral that results in even less money being spent on meals. The Army should be making improvements, said Robert Evans, the creator of Hot and Cots, a Yelp-style app where soldiers review military housing and dining facilities. You wouldn't use the logic with recruiting. The Army doesn't take away recruiting resources just because of a bad year. The issue is not new. Rep. Tim Ryan, Democrat Ohio, who has since left Congress, pressed then Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy on the matter during a budget hearing, saying the Army is either wasting half the food or the money is not being spent on the soldiers' food and it's being spent on something it's not appropriated for. However, there was seemingly no follow-up to that inquiry, which came just before COVID-19 pandemic. So here's some direct numbers from certain bases on how much money was collected from the soldiers' BAS and what was actually spent on the on food. So as an example, Fort Stewart, Georgia. Money collected from soldiers was $17 million. Money spent on food was $2.1 million. Fort Drum, New York. Money collected from soldiers was $18.2 million. Money spent on food was $3.9 million. Fort Carson, Colorado. Money collected from soldiers, $22 million. Money spent on food, $5 million. Fort Riley, Kansas. Money collected from soldiers, $19.1 million. Money spent on food, $5.1 million. Fort Bliss, Texas. Money collected from soldiers, $22 million. Money spent on food, $11 million. I'm not sure if I'm saying this one right, but Fort Cavazos, Texas, money collected from soldiers, $42.5 million. Money spent on food, $11.7 million. Fort Bragg, North Carolina, money collected from soldiers, $34.6 million. Money spent on food, $16.6 million. Fort Campbell, Kentucky, money collected from soldiers, $18 million. Money spent on food, $5.1 million. Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, money collected from soldiers, $14.5 million. Money spent on food, $5.3 million. Fort Wainwright, Alaska, money collected from soldiers, $9 million. Money spent on food, $3 million. Fort Richardson, Alaska, money collected from soldiers, $7.5 million. Money spent on food, $4 million. So there's a lot going on here. Not just veterans, but you got Army personnel right now. They're probably wondering, why are we not getting up, adequate food? But don't nobody know where this money is going. Hey, somebody made light of it, and service members deserve to know, because they deserve better. So that's all I got for you guys today. And if you know someone at any of these bases, you got kids or grandkids at some of these bases, or or if you're active duty right now, follow up with this, and just see if you can find more out. But money definitely being diverted to something else. So hey, that's all I got for you guys today. You see a veteran, help a veteran. I'm out.